Hi, and welcome to my channel. Or if you're a returning subscriber, hi again. It's so nice to see you back here for another video. My name's Teslar, and today I'm going to show you how you can create beautiful beach wave coasters using epoxy resin, alcohol ink, and a heat gun. To save some time in this video, I went ahead and I pre-mixed my resin, and as always I will have all of the materials that I use for this project linked down below, so all of that will be in the description for you. To make my brown, I'm using a combination of different mica powders by Arteza. I'm using the Aztec Gold along with the Caramel Brown as well as the Bronze. So I'm just going to take those brown colors and add them to one of my cups of clear resin. And the general rule of thumb when you're mixing pigment with resin is you want to keep it about 90% resin to 10% pigment, which does give you quite a bit of playing room. After I've added my pigments, I'm going to go ahead and mix that thoroughly into the resin, making sure I'm scraping both the sides and the bottom of my cup as I go. I also decided to add just a few drops of white, it's Blanco Blanco alcohol ink by Pinata Colors to that as well. Next, I'll be adding some Baja Blue Pinata Colors alcohol ink to another cup of my clear resin. And for this project, I want to make a teal color, a blue color, and also brown. And because I'll be using this batch of resin to pour the base of my coaster, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of white to my blue as well, just to make it a little bit more opaque. And I would just like to remind you that if you are liking this video so far, please don't forget to give it a like. It helps out my channel a whole lot, and it also lets me know that I'm making content that you want to see from me. And now that I have both my brown and my blue resin mixed up, I'm going to go ahead and add some turquoise alcohol ink to some clear resin. I'm also adding some of that Baja Blue to that as well. And the turquoise that I'm using is from a brand called Let's Resin. And again, I will have everything linked in the description below. I'm going to go ahead and hit these with my heat gun before moving on to the next step. So I've got my coaster molds here, and I'm just going to go ahead and fill up 2 of those molds using the alcohol ink that I've colored with my pigments. Starting with a little bit of brown on the side, going in with some of that teal, and then I'll finish it up with blue. And I don't want the colors to be completely even. I want to have the least amount of brown and the most amount of blue, so I am just pouring a bit of that brown in, though the resin does spread quite a bit. Then I'll fill the rest of the mold in with the teal and the blue. After that, I'll go ahead and hit those with my heat gun and let them cure before moving on to our next step. So I went ahead and I let my coasters set up overnight, I popped them out of their molds, and now I'm going to go ahead and mix up some more colors to make our first layer of waves. So I'll be using blue, that same Baja Blue, and I'll be using turquoise, and then I'll also need some white resin along with some clear resin as well. And for the turquoise, I'm using that same combination of the turquoise alcohol ink and some drops of the Baja Blue. And also I wanted to point out that, as you can see, I have my coasters elevated on 2 small cups, and that's because when I pour our layer to make our first layer of waves, I don't want the resin to drip over the sides and cause the piece to stick to my working surface. I also mixed up much less resin for this part of this project because I only need enough resin to cover about 2/3 of the surface of my coaster. And I only need just a tiny little bit of white and a small amount of clear, with the most resin going to my blue and my turquoise. So now I'm just going to go ahead and start filling in a little bit more blue at the bottom end of my coaster, and then I'll follow that up with a line of my teal. And then when you're making lacing cells with resin, it's important to go ahead and lay down just a thin layer of clear resin before adding a line of white. And that layer of clear resin is really going to help get those beautiful lacing cells. So make sure you get your clear down before adding just a thin layer of white resin right on top of that. Next, I'm going to go ahead and use my heat gun to start warming up that resin. And before I try to push the resin around, I'm just going to heat up all of the resin, because as the resin gets hotter, it gets more fluid and easier to move. And then when you make your wave, you only really want to go once across, or you start losing some cells and texture. And then I'll go ahead and repeat that same process on my second coaster, starting with the blue, and then I'll add some teal, finishing with a bit of clear before adding my white, and then heating it up and blowing it out. And if you've got a crafty or curious person in your life that you think would enjoy this video, don't forget to send it to a friend as well. So here I'm just adding my white resin on top of my layer of clear resin, and then I'll go ahead and heat it up using my heat gun and then start blowing out that wave. And after I'm happy with how the waves look, I'll go ahead and touch them up just a little bit using a popsicle stick to kind of fix the flow and movement of them. And then I'll go ahead and cover them up and let them cure overnight before moving on to the next step. Alright, so we've jumped about 24 hours into the future and the coasters are looking beautiful. I really got some cool cells, some really lacy, wispy, wave-like patterns that I'm very excited about. So I'm going to go ahead and add one more layer of waves to this guy. I went ahead and pre-mixed my resin and colored the resin. And I want my second wave to start where the first one ends, so I'm just going to put my white right down below where that first break of white is. And after I've got my layer of white down, I'll go ahead and use my heat gun once again to warm up that resin and then blow out the wave. And I'm using my old tried and true heat gun. My fiance recently bought me a new heat gun that I was using for the first set of these waves, and it's a lot more powerful. I think it's going to be better for bigger pieces, but for these pieces I'm going to go ahead and go back to my old heat gun. And I'll go ahead and list both of those heat guns down below in the description. They're both great pieces of equipment. And then here I'm just using my popsicle stick to correct this line a little bit before moving on to the second coaster. And again, putting my second layer of waves onto this coaster, and I want the wave to start where the first one stops. I just love this project so much. I think the colors are so beautiful. And if you're interested in more resin art tutorials from me, I do have an entire resin art playlist, so I'll be sure to link that in the description as well. But make sure to follow me, or subscribe rather, for weekly uploads. And here I made a little mistake and I poured my white before the clear, so I'm just going back in with the clear right underneath that white. And then once again, I'll begin to warm all of that resin up before I start to push that white resin down to create some cells. And you can already see some cells starting to form on that second piece, or the first piece that I started. Here I'm just going around the corners and the bottom, getting some of those extra resin drips. And then I'll go ahead and cover these up and let them cure once more. Alright, and so we've got our coasters all finished up, and I think that they're looking really beautiful. I love all of the movement at the top of this wave and the lacing detail from this one. I do wish this top one got a little bit more of the lacing, but overall I'm really happy with how this one turned out. But I think out of the two of them, this one's definitely my favorite. It just has so much depth and dimension. I love all these beautiful cells, all the movement, the color gradient. I think it's just beautiful. Let me know what you think of this project down below in the comments. As always, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending part of your day with me, especially if you made it all the way to the end of this video. And if you did make it all the way to the end of this video, leave me some sort of beach emoji in the comments, because I think it'd be really cute to see a comment section filled with little beach theme emojis. And once again, I will have all the materials that I used for this project linked down below in the description, so if you're interested in trying it for yourself, all that information will be down there for you. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure to subscribe because I do post weekly, and hit that bell to be notified so you never miss a video from me. I hope that this video inspires you to make something of your own today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!